First of all, thank you very much for the chance to be here today to explain our recent research about trade inequality as a network property. My name is Javier García Algarra. I work at the Department of Engineering at Centro Universitario UTAD. My colleagues are Mariluz Mouronte from Universidad Francisco de Vitoria, Javier Galeano from Universidad Politécnica de Madrid, and Gonzalo Gómez from Universidad Pontificia Comillas. International trade is the circulatory system of global economy. The flow of goods and services may be modeled as a bipartite network with two classes of nodes, exporters and importers. These nodes are tied by the existence and intensity of exchanges. We have worked with the historical data series from 1962 to 2017, available at the Observatory of Economic Complexity. We study global trade. The World Trade Network is represented as a bipartite network. Each row corresponds to an exporter country, and each column corresponds to an importer country. The size of the matrix is approximately 200 by 200. The weight of each link is the monetary value of all traded goods between exporter A and importer B during a natural year. The normalized empirical data matrix of 2017 shows that global trade figures range over 8 orders of magnitude. To study network dynamics, we have proposed a stochastic model called Synthrade. Network is created from scratch and computed year by year. Nodes arrive during a very short period of simulation time at a decreasing pace. Birth probability is inversely proportional to the number of nodes of the guild, and the parameter lambda is set to get probability of birth equal 1 when simulation starts. The new node is linked to the opposite guild nodes with a probability that is proportional to the volume traded by those countries. The synthetic matrix will have the same size and the same number of links of the empirical matrix, so there are three parameters that drive the whole network creation process: number of exporters, number of importers, and number of links. To avoid the strongly meshed condition, we just draw those cells that fall within the lower 0.1% of total trade distribution. The effect on the filtering is irrelevant for weight, as 99.9% of trade volume is kept. We start with a tiny 3x3 seed matrix. When a new node arrives, it will attach to a node of the opposite guild with a probability that is a fraction of global trade of that particular country. In addition, each simulation step will run a Bernoulli process for each matrix cell with a probability that is the product of marginal probabilities of the exporter and importer edges of that pair. Even for cells with zero weight, there is a chance of a new trade connection. This is the long-term mechanism to simulate the appearance of trade links. The weight aggregation regime happens from the initial step to the end of the simulation. Each simulation step, a token of weight 1, attaches to the matrix attracted by a probability that is proportional to the product of the marginal probabilities of exporter and importer. Most tokens are attracted towards main trade associations, such as the pair exporter 1, importer 1, this tiny red square. Each new token slightly modifies the probability matrix. After a short simulation span, the number of nodes equals that of the empirical network. We call it formation instant. The number of links is still quite small. The simulation keeps on going, just throwing new tokens with thousands of Bernoulli trials more. Eventually, the number of links of the synthetic matrix is equal to the number of links of the empirical one, and simulation stops. The weight and degree distributions tend towards the log-normal law as a result of a multiplicative process. Goodness of fit analysis shows that synthetic matrices' properties closely mimic empirical data. The synthetic model suggests that inequality is a structural property of the network. Trade growth is a product of probabilities that are proportional to the traded volumes of each exporter-importer couple. This is the origin of the extremely skewed volume distributions, an example of the Matthew effect. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Globalization has raised the world trade volume, but the Gini coefficient for both empirical and synthetic matrices is over 0.8 for the historical series from 1962 to 2017, and quite stable despite the geopolitical event. It is not enough to establish new trade deals because they improve flows from weak to strong nodes, but the structure remains unaltered. Acting upon proportionality, it is possible to modify the final distributions, as we have found. We simulate the impact of trade agreements modifying three parameters: improved trade percentage, boost percentage, and scope. With the first one, we select those nodes that are eligible for the improvement policy. For instance, the value of 1% discards all probability matrix cells in the upper 99% of the distribution. The policy only benefits trade among weak nodes, whose individual contributions to global trade are tiny. The boost percentage ranges from 25% to 200%, and is the increase in the probability of that particular matrix cell. Obviously, the probability matrix must be normalized after applying this procedure. We do not make any assumption about the political or technical nature of the improvement policy. The scope factor restricts the policy to countries that belong to the same region or extend it to whatever pair of countries if they met the improved trade percentage condition. These are the degree and strength distributions with boost trade policy. The degree is unaltered, but the left tail of strength distribution is flattened, and the traded volume is more concentrated around the log average. Remarkably, the right tail is not affected, so an equality reduction is achieved improving the weakest economies, but strong nodes do not pay a price for it. Effects of the improvement policy for the year 2005. The policy is applied to the lower 2% of global trade. Those are the results of individual experiments, and solid lines join the average values for each boost percentage. Reduction of inequality is better achieved when improvement policies are applied at a global scale instead of regionally. Effects of the improvement policy for year 2017 by World Bank lending groups. Regional improvements may lead to counterintuitive results. For instance, an increase of inequality in sub-Saharan Africa. And this is an effect of the Matthew effect restricted to a regional area. The strongest nodes in sub-Saharan Africa are most benefit from the improvement policies, and they attract more trade. What are the conclusions of this research? We have found two insights that may be helpful to design and deploy some economic policies. First one, the Gini index reduction has no sensible effect on the right tail of the distribution. Major traders are not threatened. Second one is that the improvement ratio without regional restrictions follows a quadratic pattern. Even small actions may reduce inequality if they are focused on the group of extremely poor nodes. In order to increase the representation of poorest countries in the international trade network, trade agreements between underrepresented countries should be promoted globally and not only through regional blocs. The persistence of the Matthew effect suggests that beyond those trade agreements, inequality is a structural property of the network. The current trend toward the globalization and protectionism of developed countries should not become an obstacle to follow the policy course recommended in this work. Countries can improve their representation on the international trade network following their own agendas. And finally, these are the two papers that we have published during the last year, where you can find the details of this work. Thank you very much for your attention.